Hi again then guys, and welcome to my 13th pick in my series of 30 vehicles which I would love to see debut on a GranTurismo game, either current or future. At this point it seems that GranTurismo 7 is the most likely platform to see most of these cars debut, if any of them were to make it onto a GranTurismo game. Some of them, as I've mentioned in the series before, are certainly more likely than others to be featured on a GT game, and many of the cars in this series have been featured on other games before. There are also a lot that haven't, but there are certainly some that have. Now this car is very interesting. It's one of the most widely loved supercars of the modern or recent years, but it's a car which isn't featured on anywhere near as many racing games as you'd expect, namely GranTurismo and Forza. Neither game has ever featured this car that I'm aware of, not even as a DLC vehicle. Forza has got close with the Cinque. GranTurismo is still pretty far off. The closest we have is the C12S 7.3. And the car is the Pagani Zonda F. The F, of course, standing for Fangio, a race driver and personal friend of Horacio Pagani. And the F version of the Zonda is essentially the Zonda in its ultimate pure form. It's not the ultimate Zonda, that would have to be the Zonda R, of course, but the Zonda F represents the pure, simple, original concept of the Zonda taken to the ultimate level. Anything beyond the Zonda F, technically even the Club Sport version, is not quite as pure. It's certainly quicker, but it loses that simple purity that makes the normal Zondas so good. In my opinion at least. The Cinque, for instance, makes the Zonda into more of a race car. The Zonda R, of course, is essentially a race car. The Revolution version is a race car for the road, etc. And there are various other special versions which came from cars like the Cinque, such as the Tricolori, which are, again, basically just fancy liveried versions of road-going racers. The Zonda F is not a road-going racer. It's a supercar in its purest and ultimate form. Everything after that, until the Huayra debuted, were basically just evolutions of the Zonda F. Even the Zonda R took the essential design of the Zonda F and stretched it into a GT1, almost Le Mans style build. For me personally, although the Zonda F is no longer my favourite car, the Chazetta V16T is, the Zonda F did used to be my favourite car, especially the open-top version. Not the Club Sport, but just the regular Zonda F Roadster. And although it's no longer my favourite car, I do still consider the Zonda F to be one of very, very few vehicles which I would actually say is perfect at what it's supposed to do. Cars like the Chazetta, to some degree, to me, is the perfect old-school supercar. The Zonda F, I would say, is the perfect supercar in the broad and complete sense. And various other vehicles in different categories, I would say, are perfect in their respective categories. The Zonda F, I would say, is perfect for a number of reasons. And technically speaking, I would say it's perfect for every reason, because it's one of the very few cars which I would not change a single thing about, and that's one of the reasons why I prefer the Zonda F to any of the other Zondas that came after it, because they lost that purity. They were faster, they were more powerful, they were more hardcore, but that's not what the Zonda's about. It's never tried to be the fastest or best at anything in the traditional sense of being quick or fast, like a Veyron, a Koenigsegg, or a McLaren. It's just a pure supercar, in a similar way to cars like the Porsche Carrera GT. It's just designed to be a pure machine for driving pleasure, rather than for winning races, or setting lap records, or driving across salt flats. It's just not that kind of supercar. And I prefer that kind of supercar. I think that being a pure driving machine will always trump something that's just fast for the sake of it, in the supercar class. Now that said, I recently suggested that I think that the Hennessy Venom GT should be featured on GranTurismo, and this isn't a contradiction of that. I like that car for completely different reasons. But if I had the opportunity of owning either car, there would be no contest. It would be the Zonda, because as fast as the Hennessy is, that's all it's designed for. It's not designed to be fun, particularly. It's not designed to win a looks competition or to be as unique as possible. It took elements of existing technology, put them together to make the ultimate straight-line machine. That is about as far away from a Zonda F as you can get. The Zonda F is, as I said, more in line with vehicles like the Carrera GT, and to some degree I would say the Maserati MC12, although the MC12 is more of a racing machine. But in as much as those three vehicles in particular, the Carrera GT, the Zonda F and the MC12, are cars which I would really say are almost works of art, engineering masterpieces for pure fun of driving. Now in other ways, other vehicles are also masterpieces. The Koenigsegg, for instance, pretty much any Koenigsegg is a masterpiece of eccentric, extreme design and performance. The Veyron is, purely from a technical standpoint, a masterpiece. The Zonda, though, I would say is a masterpiece for a very specific reason above all else, in the case of me personally, and that is that it manages to blend being very old-fashioned, but also ultra-modern at the same time. It's almost like the gothic steampunk of supercars, because from the outside it's about as current as you could possibly get. The car is from 2005, well that's when it debuted, but it still looks as fresh now as it did then. You can't say that for many cars that are over a decade old. Even cars from 5 years old start to look dated because of the way cars look and the way they change their looks so constantly now. The Zonda F doesn't look aged at all. You could quite easily release the Zonda F now as a brand new model and it would still look as current as ever, because it's not designed to look from a specific age. It is, by definition, an ageless design. But that's from the outside. Once you open the door and get into the car, that completely changes. It's almost like you've stepped into a completely different vehicle, something which looks like an alternate future, which is why I say it's very much a steampunk supercar. To any who are unfamiliar with steampunk culture, basically it's an alternative history where mankind kept using steam technology, and the clothing and design is very much inspired by steam engines, pipes, cogs, and that kind of gothic appearance. Almost like a modernised Victorian era. To me, that is exactly what the Zonda F is. Inside, it looks like what a Victorian supercar would have looked like. It has a belt buckle on the glove box. It has a wooden steering wheel. It has the option of virtually any interior colour you could possibly want, including pinks, purples, reds and oranges. It's a timeless car that combines the most old-fashioned automotive styling cues and the latest together, and they work unbelievably well. There are very few vehicles which do that. I would also say personally that Spiker does that very well also. Their cars are very much timeless designs in my opinion. Very similar to the Zonda in fact in that regard, and to me that's something that the Huayra doesn't have. The Huayra is certainly a technically impressive car, but to me it doesn't have the timeless class of the Zonda. It's a bit too soft in comparison. Less of a work of art, more of a traditional supercar. Now, in terms of pure hard facts, not personal opinion, what does the Zonda F represent bringing to the table? Well, like most other Zondas, it's powered by a large displacement Mercedes-AMG engine, a 7.3 litre naturally aspirated V12. In the form that I would like to see on the game, it puts out just over 600 horsepower, 602. That doesn't sound all that amazing. Even in 2005, that was far from being the most powerful of supercars. But the Zonda F only weighs 1,230 kilos, which is remarkably light for a supercar of any class, let alone one that is certainly not a stripped-out track day special that has no comfort. look at the interior of the Zonda, it certainly does not look sparse by any means. 1230 kilos and 602 horsepower, combined with rear-wheel drive and a 6-speed manual gearbox, which is a rarity in itself in modern supercars. And the Zonda F is, as it happens, seriously quick in a straight line, although it's not particularly designed for that. It does 0 to 60 in 3.6 seconds, which is faster than, say, a Carrera GT or an SLR, and the top speed is 214 miles per hour, which is quicker than a Bugatti EB110 and various other models, including every previous Zonda, up to and including the 7.3-litre C12S, which wasn't exactly a slow car anyway. As far as handling, you could quite easily imagine that the Zonda F would be a terrifying car to drive. That much power, especially from an AMG engine, who are notorious for huge torque and being unforgiving, let's say, towards tyres, you would be forgiven for thinking that the Zonda F would be a monster to drive, constantly slipping its tail out around corners, being not exactly a small car either, with fat, chunky tyres on the back, minimal downforce, and really no racing pedigree to speak of. It could quite easily be one of the worst cars you could ever drive, like the Ford GT90 or Jaguar XJR15. But that's just not the case. In fact, Zondas are ironically known for being some of the best supercars you could ever drive. Their handling is remarkably forgiving, very finessed and very well engineered, extremely fun, and, when they need to be, dominatingly quick. In that same test that I mentioned Evo magazine doing a while back in this series, where they compared various supercars, including the MC12 and Enzo, the Zonda F beat them. It beat the Carrera GT, it beat the MC12, it beat the Enzo, and it even beat a Koenigsegg CCX around the Nürburgring Ring. So it has serious competitive potential, even though that's not its first and foremost goal. As far as price, the Zonda F is a fantastic investment. It was around, I believe, a £450,000 car when it came out new, and now they're worth more than £1 million. Base price. And another tribute to just how amazing the Zonda F was is that it refuses to die. Many supercars have ended their production run. You can no longer buy an SLR, you can no longer buy a Carrera GT, you can no longer buy an Enzo or an MC12. As good as they were, they ended their run. The Zonda F technically has, but you can still buy a brand new Zonda F in any specification you want, straight out of the factory, because it's so good that the customers won't allow it to die, and that's exactly how it should be. And if people who actually put their money where their mouth is say that the car means that much to them, that really tells you how good a supercar the Zonda F actually is. Now, were it on the game, the Zondas that are already on there show us exactly how good they could be. They're extremely fast for top-end performance, not necessarily the easiest to drive around the track when fully tuned, because the game isn't as accurate to real life as it should be in that regard, but the Zonda R and the Huayras show just how competitive they can be, both for circuit and straight-line potential. And the Zonda F would actually bridge the gap between the generations. The first generation Zondas are already on the game, and the Huayras, which took over from the Zonda, is also on the game. The F, which is the middle generation, isn't. Now, some would probably prefer the Cinque or the Tricolore, but personally, for the reasons I've already mentioned, I would love to see the Zonda F feature on the game. So, that's it overall for this particular pick. I think that as far as how it would fit into the game, pretty much speaks for itself. PP-wise, you're easily looking around 600, if not more. And as far as price, I'd like to see it cost something like 630, 670,000, something like that. Then again, considering the price of the Zonda that's already on the game is 1 million credits, I would happily pay more. 1.5 million would still be a bargain for a car as good as the Zonda F is. But that's it for this pick overall. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.